Hello, I'm Jim Lampley. Welcome to this look back at the stories behind Tyson Douglas, one of the most memorable fights in 30 years of boxing on HBO. Mike Tyson made his first trip to Tokyo in March 1988 for a rapid destruction of former titleist Tony Tubbs. By the time of Tyson's next Pacific crossing 2 years later, his life had become an earthquake, an unrelenting series of seismic tabloid shocks, and the specter of the big one loomed closer than anyone on this bad planet could possibly have imagined.
In February of 1990, 23-year-old Mike Tyson was about to enter the ring for the 38th time in his professional career. The fight was taking place in Tokyo, Japan, and his opponent, as usual, was paid little heed. This was just another demonstration of Tyson at the peak of his powers. The culmination of a career that began with a ferocious and memorable debut in the mid-1980s.
Well, a lot of Tyson's early opponents were terrified because of his record and his manner, and the way he just came roaring out of the corner and was throwing punches nonstop.
He was being fed a lot of stiffs and just reeling off these one-round knockouts. He was doing it so spectacularly and so routinely that you could hardly help but get enthusiastic about this.
They're always drawn to the big punch. The big punch is something out of the primordial ooze that we cannot deny. Now, I've seen Tyson hit guys and just remove them from the consciousness of the earth.
In 1986, Tyson, at age 20, became the youngest heavyweight champion in history.
And we have a new era in boxing.
He wasn't just winning fights, and he wasn't just knocking out everybody. I mean, he was knocking them out in the first round, and it looked like this was his destiny.
By the end of 1989, Tyson had muscled his way to the top of the heavyweight ranks, and the only legitimate challenger left was Evander Holyfield. Their meeting was much anticipated, but slow in the making. So Tyson signed up for a quick payday against an undistinguished opponent, James "Buster" Douglas from Columbus, Ohio. A tall fighter with a generous reach, 29-year-old Douglas had shown flashes of a potential which had thus far gone unfulfilled.
In 1990, Buster Douglas was just another heavyweight out there who looked like a sitting duck for Mike Tyson.
Buster Douglas was one of the great underachievers of his time. He always was sort of perceived as a guy who really liked to fight. You know, he had a lot of tremendous physical talent. The big debate was, is anybody going to go to Tokyo to cover the fight?
The only important stage that Buster Douglas had ever been on before this fight was against Tony Tucker, a good fighter. And he was beating Tony Tucker until he ran out of gas. That was interpreted as, this guy doesn't have heart, will, spirit, need, whatever it was. Only one betting parlor would put up odds on the fight, and that was probably just as a gag.
They say it was 42-1, it was 1,000-1, or 1,000,000-1. No one gave us a prayer.
If Tyson had the odds in his favor, the one thing Douglas could claim was a boxing pedigree, thanks to his father, William "Dynamite" Douglas, who fought professionally from 1967 to 1980.
Bill was an aggressive fighter. He'd throw body shots a lot like Mike Tyson, and he had a left-right combo that'd take your head off.
He had a heavy bag in his basement. He would work all day at a hard job, go home, hit this heavy bag, and train himself.
My father took me in the gym when I was 10. He was a center leader at the local gym here. I was on him about, wanting to come in and box.
Bill coached James, and he was probably harder on James than any one of his boxers because he wanted James to have all the opportunities that he never got in a professional race.
Bill was a nice man, but he was a no-nonsense guy. Buster sort of took after his mother, was just a sweet, kind, nice lady.
A lot of times James would want to play basketball in the gym, and Mrs. Douglas would come and get him out the gym and get him back into the boxing room so that he can continue his training. She wanted her son to be even better than her husband.
Buster Douglas.
After Douglas turned pro in 1981, in spite of his inconsistencies, he did go farther than his father had as a boxer. And in signing to fight Tyson, Douglas would have a chance, however far-fetched, to win the world title. But just 23 days before the bout, everything changed when Buster's mother, Lula Pearl, died of a stroke at age 47.
I called James and I said, let's cancel the fight. He said no.
I was more determined. I told him, I said, I'm all right. And I think that even helped the intensity even more.
He told me that she would want him to go on. He was very close to his mom. Before she had passed, she come to his house and she was real worried about him fighting Mike Tyson because she had heard what an animal he was. And he goes, no, I'm okay, I'm gonna beat him. She had went and told one of her girlfriends, oh, Buster's gonna beat Mike Tyson, you know? So that really gave him confidence too. She was having her battles, but yet she was still looking out for her baby. I mean, that's love, you know?
Soon after his mother's death, Buster resumed training, keeping his grief private until one moment after a workout, a few days before the fight.
He had his head down with a towel over his head. And I picked the towel up and he was just sobbing. Just broke down, and it was because of his mom, you know. That was the first time that I had saw that, and I thought, oh, he just told me he missed his mom.
In February of 1990, the boxing press, Mike Tyson, and a grieving but focused Buster Douglas traveled to Tokyo.
The story of his mother's death had been communicated to us, but we didn't know at that moment that it had somehow galvanized him. He was, for this one big occasion, going to be the fighter of his dreams.
We covered that fight almost as an afterthought, and we got there late in the week, and Tyson was sort of off limits or jetting around, I don't know which. At that point, the only person available was Douglas, because who wanted to talk to Douglas?
Fear was a lot of Tyson's weaponry in the past when he was at his greatness. The fighters came in almost frozen, almost the prey of a cobra. But Buster Douglas, by his mother just dying, he had no fear. What do I care? That just happened to be the perfect timing that he had to fight a dissipating Tyson whose mind is going everywhere, and a lot of it's following Robin Gibbons' retreating figure.
While Tyson seemed indestructible going into the fight, his personal life had been full of turmoil. His brief marriage to actress Robin Givens ended in divorce in 1988, amid allegations that Tyson had beaten her and that he was manic-depressive.
He was regarded as being in a morbid frame of mind because of his difficulties with Robin and the breakup of that relationship. You know, let's face it, Mike was known to be an unusual personality anyway.
By late 1988, Tyson's behavior had become increasingly bizarre.
Boxing champion Mike Tyson allegedly went on another emotional rampage.
Tyson lost control of his BMW and
Mike Tyson was found guilty yesterday of fondling.
The champ's troubles continue to multiply.
At the same time, Tyson was taking apart his old management team and bringing in the new, led by controversial promoter Don King. Gone were manager Bill Caton and longtime trainer Kevin Rooney. Replacing Rooney was Aaron Snoll, who soon found out that he had an uncooperative fighter on his hands.
He no longer wanted me to run with him. He didn't want to be bothered. He said, if they come and get me to run, I'm leaving up out of here. And that was his attitude. In a workout in Tokyo, Mike was sparring with Greg Page, and he got hit and went down. He looked at me when he went down. I said, get up. And he got up and came over like this, and I wiped his gloves off, and I told him to go back in there. I had sat down one night, and I talked to Mike. I told him, you're not Superman, and the best that I know about this game, the things you've been doing and how you've been doing it, you're headed for a butt whooping.
And we are live inside Korakuen Stadium in Tokyo, Japan, as HBO Sports presents World Championship Boxing.
This was a fight that took place at about 9 o'clock in the morning in Japan so that it could be broadcast to New York. And it was the weirdest feeling I've ever had in a fight, because the people were totally, I wouldn't say unenthusiastic, but they were so polite. It was the dullest crowd I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like it.
I always say that in the Tokyo Dome, you could hear a rat piss on cotton. That's how quiet it was.
When I went over into the dressing room to check Tyson's gloves, he was walking like an animal in there, storming back and forth, looking at me like he wanted to kill me, you know. So Mike Tyson was ready to fight. And when I left the room, I told him, I said, you know, you're going to get your ass kicked. But I got out of there real quick when I told him that.
When Douglas trotted into the ring, there was almost a sense of bemusement. We thought he was going to his doom, but he didn't.
Mike Tyson rushing toward the ring, wanting to get it on and get it over with.
When he got into the ring, I could see that he wasn't in top shape. And plus I had heard, someone said he wasn't really doing any training and he was, you know, having a good time over there, and you can have a good time in Japan. But Douglas was in good shape. I remember that.
James Buster